It's great to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about how students and families and institutions can get the most out of college. We'll jump right in to introduce myself. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a father, a husband, consultant to lots and lots of colleges and universities, and a background in design. I actually started off as an architect, and I enjoyed being an architect, but I was a little bit frustrated that often we didn't know enough about the people we were designing for. I had the view, and I found others that share this view, that what's happening in a space is more important than the space itself. So I really wanted to learn more about people and to help them and to improve their experience and realize that you need more than space to do that. And so started a company to help with that and to look not just at the space, but the support services and the technology. And as I've been doing that over the years, I've learned a lot, and I've seen how colleges and universities work. I've also seen how great they can be in terms of creating opportunities for students to find a purpose, find a career path, find a place, find their people. But I've also seen how it can be a struggle to have a sense of belonging, feel like you're part of something, like you matter, like you're respected, like you're valued, to get the support you need, to see how your class is going to connect to a career. And so I really wanted to share what I've learned with a broader audience to improve the college experience for as many students as possible, as quickly as possible, because a lot of times these consulting projects take years to realize. It took several years for us to work on designing advising and creating a new advising center for that. So I'm so excited at the prospect that a student or a parent or a guardian, family member, grandparent might read something one morning and then put it to use the next day. I also wrote the book not just to share what I've learned, but to keep learning. And I have to say, a fantastic part of the process was interviewing people over the years. This is just a rough count, but I've probably done about 2,000 interviews, workshops, focus groups with different students and faculty across all these colleges. But I learned so much from interviewing students anew in the past year, especially as they struggle through and also succeed during COVID, and from so many experts in the field that I learned from, and I'm excited about spotlighting and amplifying their work. The big idea in the book is in part based on the design background that Mary Beth, you mentioned. And that is really my hope, that students can see going to college as a creative act. They can see their experience as something they make, they create, they design. And that way they can get more out of it by bringing that intention, taking charge, taking control, and maybe shifting the narrative or the story we all tell ourselves about education. A lot of people talk about navigating, and I get how it can feel like one, but if you're thinking about college as an obstacle course, that's going to limit your success, and thinking about it as something you create is even better. I had the good fortune to interview so many great students. One of them put this perfectly. He said, when you take on the autonomy of designing your own experience on your own terms, you advocate for yourself and your needs in and out of the classroom, then the experience will be so much more than it would have otherwise. We desire to have an experience that celebrates who we are, and that only happens if you design it. I couldn't have said it any better. And the book has quotes like this throughout it, because I really tried to incorporate the student voice so students and families could hear from each other directly. The other thing, in addition to this, don't just navigate, create idea, I'm really hoping to help build some connections between the academic, social, and career aspects of college, and to look at student experience holistically, helping students think about what they're doing in and out of classes, their career paths, the campus, the community they're a part of, how they find support, how they find connection and relationships, and provide advice on all these facets of college life, while also acknowledging that it's different for everyone, and that you need a kind of a choose your own adventure approach to find what works for you. And the way I tried to do that choose your own adventure was to find a format that's approachable, that's accessible, and is also empowering. So the book contains 127 tips, and these tips are all formatted the same way. They start with what to do, then why to do it, and that's supported by the evidence, the research that I found both in my own practice, from these interviews, from experts. There's several hundred different sources that are backing up these different tips, and then organizing them into small chunks so people can choose their own adventure, they can design their own experience. And these tips, they're building blocks. Those tips are organized in 3 sections. There's a know before you go section that's really about knowing yourself, understanding your strengths, your interests, your relationships, your values, your goals. Some of these are tough questions for anyone to answer, let alone an 18-year-old or a 38-year-old or anything in between. But it's a good place to start. And then knowing your college options, understanding the landscape, knowing what to look for, especially if based on your interests, based on your lived experience, based on your background. The second section talks about the common facets of college life. These are the building blocks I was talking about earlier, where for each of these sections, there's 5 to 10 to 15 tips on thriving in classes, on building relationships with peers, with advisors, with professors, with mentors, finding the support you need, whether it's mental health or technology or from a library, everything in between. Accessing the technology you need, really mastering the technology you need, whether it's to join an online course or to pay a bill or to manage your schedule or to collaborate with other students, enjoying and benefiting from the campus, and then exploring different career paths. And then the third section of the book is really acknowledging that everyone's a bit different. No 2 student experiences will be the same, and that different identities might benefit from different advice, as well as learning more about what different people are going through, whether they're the same or different from you in a variety of ways. So there's 5 to 10 tips for each of these different student identities: first gens, students with children, students with disabilities, LGBTQ+, students of color, international students, veteran students, transfer students, student athletes. And this section is really where I had the wonderful opportunity to talk to a variety of different experts, and those conversations found their way into the book as tips, and the research as the support or evidence for those tips. So in the book, you find, for instance, an overview of the section, in this case, transfer students. That overview is kind of laying out the big issues with a quote from the expert I interviewed. In this case, that was Randy at Adelon State, who runs their amazing transfer student center. Then you find specific tips like tip 107. In that case, that's from the international student section, getting students to talk about how they're doing and feeling. And this was a great conversation I had with David, who runs Columbia's International Students and Scholars Office, and is really referencing the fact that several studies have pointed out that international students are about half as likely to seek mental health support. So getting folks in the habit of talking about how they're doing and feeling can really help them. At the end of each chapter, you also find a reflection activity that gives students or readers a chance to see what resonates with them and think about what challenges they might encounter as they apply these tips, how they're going to overcome them, and what they can do right now. And that's based on research about how you create meaningful action plans. And then each chapter also has the sources or the references there, including links in the ebook version. I know there's lots of people that love print, myself included. There's also lots of benefits to the electronic edition because you have direct links to all the research. Some example tips from each section. I think one of the interesting parts of the getting to know yourself is thinking about parental involvement. That's certainly a hot topic. There's lots of research on that. And for instance, a great NASPA study showing that the students whose parents were most involved tended to also be happier, but also have reduced academic performance. So it's kind of a mix there. And you see here an example of incorporating a student story. Here the student is saying, sitting down and having a conversation about expectations and communication levels was important, especially in my first semester. My mom would get worried if I didn't text her back right away, and would even text my roommate. So we had to talk specifically about when I could respond, and I had to help her let go. An example from the second section, talking about building your support network. And this is really great advice that came from Jennifer at the National Center for the First Year Experience, thinking about the different networks that students can build as they arrive on campus. A social network, people going through the same things, a peer leader network of people who know more than you. Maybe it's your RA, maybe it's an advisor, a mentor, someone who can both relate to what you're going through, but also has more knowledge and experience. And then the professional network, professors, advisors, mentors, and others. And then an example, and an example student quote, I put myself out there to meet new people and talk to them about what I was going through. Now we study together for exams, work on homework, and have a good time when we're not in class. Having a good support system is super helpful. And that's a great example of that connection between academic, social, and career that is certainly one of the themes in the book. Finally, an example of one of the tips from the third section, going to the LGBTQ+ Center, where you can find resources and community. And eventually, as you become part of that community, you maybe even as a student offer programming, events. Oftentimes, students know what they need better than staff or faculty, and having a center where they can be responsible for and take ownership for some of the programming can be really, really valuable. And the quote here from a student, it's a great way to connect with that community. It's a space just for you. You can meet a lot of people there. My previous college, this happened to be a transfer student, didn't have it, and my current one does, and it's made a huge difference. I've met more than 10 people at the Pride Center in the last few weeks, and it makes you feel that you're not alone, that you have community, that you have a space, that faculty and staff are there for you. I wanted to touch, in addition to these individual tips, there are also some big themes in the book that cut across those tips. One of them is certainly belonging. And these are some of the student quotes that speak to those tips. Putting yourself out there and meeting new people. We just heard from that student. Asking for help is certainly a big theme. One of the things I see in my consulting work is that colleges and universities offer so many amazing things that go unused or underused because students either don't know about them, aren't aware of them, may not feel comfortable accessing them, maybe don't even feel entitled to use them. A lot of what I and others have uncovered is a hesitancy, oh, somebody else needs that more, so I'm not going to go to the writing center, or I'm not going to go to the counseling center. So encouraging students to take full advantage of what their college or university offers and get the help they need. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You're not alone. People care about you. If you don't ask, they won't know either. It's your first resource, not a last resort. It's okay to tell people if things aren't going well. Another great student quote. And finally, on this college career connection, my school has opportunities to work in teams on real projects for real companies. It was great to have opportunities to apply what I'm learning and really get to work hands-on on a big project. And in my own career, I've tried to help make those connections, whether I'm on an advisory board or a guest lecture. I'm always trying to help students find their purpose and career path and use that as a way of focusing and applying what they're learning in and out of the classroom, because it makes it so much more meaningful. As I mentioned before, one of the great pleasures and privileges of this book project was amplifying the voices of students. I interviewed lots of students, but I had an ad hoc panel of student advisors that are the folks listed here on the left. Many of them were part of Brightspot's Council of Student Advisors, which is like our student advisory board to give us advice and hold us accountable. So I really benefited from advice from students throughout the process. And then I got to interview lots and lots of experts on different topics. And I really appreciate what they had to offer. And I won't read all of these, but just a sample of some of the great insights that students provided, like something as simple as not going to tutoring because high school tutoring costs money, and in college it's generally free, but you might not know that. I'm talking about embracing your identity instead of changing it to fit in, talking about how meeting someone at Career Services opens up this whole world of people that are there to help you, talking about the hidden curriculum, like what is RMain. I thought that was a great one. Why is that Thursday? So I really benefited from all these great conversations, not only that I've had over the years, but in the last year with students. I also benefited tremendously, and I hope the readers will as well, from all the experts I talked to, like Dr. Strayhorn at Junior Union. All college students need support to be successful: financial, academic, emotional, social, or all of these. It's the amount, it's the quantity, the quality, the forms of support that vary. You're not inadequate or broken or delayed because you need help. You'll be successful because you got help. Or Randy from Portland State, you don't know what you need till you need it. We can't expect students to be aware of hundreds of resources, but we can expect them to know a few folks who can help them and point them to the resources they may not know are available. And I think while I wrote the book with the primary audience as students and families, I'm very much hoping that institutions can see value in the book and can use it to think about how they can create the kind of experience that students and their families are seeking, and how they can think about their spaces, their services, their technology to make that happen. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I'm really looking forward to today's great conversation.